Hello there, a good day to you. Welcome to another session on this channel. The first time I actually heard this topic,
What? The heart has a skeleton.
but my teacher, being the kind-hearted person that she is, brushed aside my ignorance with a smile, opened the textbook and showed me the area that I was supposed to read and come for the next day. And the best part is, I kid you not, this question actually came for the finals. I won't say I aced the question, but with the help of the diagram that I remember, I was able to score at least more than 50% for a question. So now you know I have a certain history with the topic of our discussion today. Previously, I thought that the topic was only concerned at a postgraduate level. However, in the recent CBME curriculum, we have come to see that the fibrous skeleton of the heart or the skeleton of the heart is considered as a core competency topic for the MBA students. So this is considered to be a comparatively difficult topic. I've tried my level best to make it as simple and as digestible as possible. Some of it will be dealt with at a UG level, and some other areas will be dealt with at a PG level. So you can absorb whatever you can according to your own CPU capacity. So let us see what is the skeleton of the heart. So first things first, since what is the skeleton of the heart forms a major chunk of the topic, we will deal with that later. I think a better approach would be, let us see where it is present, then we'll see why is it called the skeleton of the heart, and to understand that we have to see what the functions of the skeleton of the heart is, and then we look at what is the skeleton of the heart. So now coming to the location of the skeleton of the heart. From the diagram that you see over here, the view is actually a superior view in which the atria have been removed. So in simple terms, location wise, the skeleton of the heart is at the atrioventricular junction. Now coming to why it is called the skeleton of the heart. The skeleton of the heart is not skeletal in the strict sense that we are all aware of. However, it is the fibrous skeleton of the heart which gives attachment to the muscles, that is the atrial muscles and the ventricular muscles. It gives support to the valves of the heart. It gives attachment to the pulmonary trunk and the aorta. So if you look at the functions of the fibrous skeleton of the heart, it resembles the skeletal system that we are all aware of. That is the reason why it is called the fibrous skeleton of the heart. So now let us see what is the skeleton of the heart. The skeleton of the heart will be discussed on the basis of two models. One is the two-dimensional model, the other being the three-dimensional model. At a UG level, I believe the two-dimensional model and its features are more than sufficient. But a 3D model and its explanation will be what is expected of a postgraduate candidate. So let us look at the 2D model first. So if you look at the diagram over here, what you see right now is the 2D model of the skeleton of the heart. And like I said in the previous part, what you see over here is the atria has been removed. Okay, and what you're looking at is the superior view of the ventricles, and you can see there are 4 orifices. Okay, and these 4 orifices, what you're looking at are the pulmonary orifice, then you have the aortic orifice, the tricuspid orifice, and the mitral orifice. Okay, all these orifices are surrounded by fibrous rings that is shown as green in the diagram. Okay, now what you're supposed to look over here is between the pulmonary orifice and the aortic orifice, you can see a green line. That is basically a schematic representation. This diagram, of course, is a schematic representation. So what we're showing over there is there's a connection between the fibrous ring of the pulmonary and the aortic. That is known as the tendon of infundibulum. Now, between the mitral, the tricuspid, and the aortic, you can see there's a green area. That is basically the fibrous tissue shown as roughly a triangular area over there. That is called trigonum fibrosum dextrum. Okay, trigonum fibrosum dextrum. I know the names are a bit difficult, but you'll get the hang of it, don't worry. So we have the trigonum fibrosum dextrum and the left margin of that, which connects the mitral to the aortic. That is known as the trigonum fibrosum sinistrum. So what you see over here is, in simple terms, the schematic representation of the 2D model of the skeleton of the heart. So just a reminder, as always, please do view, share and like our videos. We hope you found this session useful. Please do leave your valuable comments in the comment section below, and do not forget to hit the bell icon for future notifications. Now let us get back to the video again. Now coming to the 3D model of the fibroskeleton of the heart. In the previous section, I had told that the 2D model is meant for at the UG level, and the 3D model is meant for at the PG level. But of course, even if at the UG level one can grasp the 3D model and present it in the examination, in the papers, any examiner would be very happy. I, for one person, would be definitely happy. That's for sure. So let us have a look at the 3D model. Now before we look at the 3D model, just a few reminders from the 2D model. See, the 2D model and the 3D model are not poles apart. In the 3D model also you have to have 4 rings. Okay, the difference over there is, in the 2D model it was fibrous ring. Over here it is a collagenous ring, or like they say, or like the books mention, collagenous annuli, one and the same thing. Over there the pulmonary was at right angles to the aortic, not in the same plane. Here also the pulmonary is not at the same plane of the aortic, it's at right angles to the aortic. In the 2D model also we saw that the aortic valve is more closer, or in more close relationship with the mitral and the tricuspid. Same thing applies in the 3D model. It is the aortic annulus that forms the central area of the 3D model, and here also the aortic annulus is in close relationship with the mitral and the tricuspid. So now let us look at the aortic annulus, which forms the central part of the 3D model. So if you look in the diagram over here, what you see is, you can see there are 4 rings like I told before, but we have the diagram slightly changed over here. You can see sort of a red rose and a blue rose over there. That is just for the purpose of depiction. So the red rose, if I may, is a representation of the aortic annulus. And if you look in the diagram, you can see that there are 2 scallops which are visible over here. What is a scallop? Right, so the aortic annulus has 3 scallops actually. 2 which are visible over here, and you have 1 that is on the other side of this diagram. Okay, so which are they? You have the anterior scallop, then you have the left and posterior, right and posterior. Now if you look at the diagram over here, the nadir, otherwise known as the bottom of the scallops, the left and the posterior, you can see there's a small black area over there. That is basically the left fibrous trigone. Okay, and if you look at the bottom of the right and posterior, there's another one, there's another black coloration that is given over there. That is the right fibrous trigone. These are basically collagenous thickenings that are present over there. Okay, so the left fibrous trigone gives attachment to the anterior filum coronarium. Okay, and if you look in the diagram again, the right fibrous trigone gives attachment to the posterior filum coronarium. Now the 2 ones which I mentioned just now are that of the mitral valve. Okay, and the posterior fibrous trigone also gives attachment to the anterior and posterior fila coronariae of the tricuspid valve. What is fila coronarium? Okay, so now from this diagram we have been able to depict this much. Now look at the area between the 2 scallops, that is the posterior left and posterior right. You can see there's a greenish area that is marked over there. That is the subaortic span. Okay, area that is at the lower aspect of the aorta. So you don't have to by heart it. Subaortic span. It is this subaortic span that continues further down as the subaortic curtain. And the subaortic curtain basically separates the inflow and outflow tracts of the blood of the left ventricle. The authors mention it acts as a baffle. What is baffle? Do not be baffled. So I told you the aortic annulus has 3 scallops. We have seen only 2, and I told you there's one on the other side of the diagram. So what about that? The bottom or the nadir of that one does not present any fibrous thickening. However, if you look at the diagram, you can see there's a connection between the pulmonary annulus and the aortic annulus over there. So that connection, that is the tendon of the infundibulum, which we saw in the 2D model also. So that basically comes from the bottom or the nadir of the anterior scallop that is present on the other side of this diagram, which connects the aortic annulus to the pulmonary annulus. So this, in short, we could say are the components of the aortic annulus of a 3D model of the skeleton of the heart. Now let us come to the next component, that is the pulmonary annulus. So again, if you look at the diagram over here, you can see the pulmonary annulus, for the purpose of depiction only, is shown as a blue rose over here. Okay, so just like in the case of the aortic annulus, the pulmonary annulus also has 3 scallops. In this case, however, it is 1 on the posterior aspect and 2 on the anterior. Just as you saw in the case of the aortic annulus, the gap or the space or the span between the 2 scallops is called the subvalvar span in this case. It is also clear from the diagram that we've already talked about the tendon of the infundibulum, which attaches the pulmonary annulus to the aortic annulus. In fact, it is the tendon of infundibulum which undergoes torsion during the ventricular ejection, because there's a chance of the pulmonary annulus to separate away from the aortic annulus. So that is prevented by the torsion of the tendon of the infundibulum. Another important thing to note over here, I've already mentioned it, but I'm just repeating it again. If you look at the diagram over here, you can see the pulmonary annulus is at 90 degrees to the aortic annulus. They do not lie in the same plane. So in short, that would be the components of the pulmonary annulus. So now let us come to what are the components of the mitral annulus. Again, if you look at the diagram over here, you can see the left fibrous trigone, which is again, like I showed before, it is a condensation that is shown black in color, and you also have your right fibrous trigone from the diagram, plus you have the phyla coronariae, which are attached respectively to these 2. Also, you have the subaortic span between the 2 fibrous bodies, which act as the subaortic curtain. In addition to this, you also have the weak sulcal connective tissue, which attaches the ends or the tips of the phyla coronariae. So these are the components of the mitral annulus. One thing I just want to stress upon again is the right fibrous trigone, or is sometimes known as the central fibrous body. So please remember, it is the right fibrous trigone that is sometimes called the central fibrous body. So these are the components of the mitral annulus. So now let us come to the components of the tricuspid annulus. So if you look at the diagram over here, in the tricuspid annulus, the components are, in simple terms, the right fibrous trigone, also called central fibrous body. Then you have the anterior and posterior phyla coronariae of the tricuspid over there, plus the weak sulcal connective tissue which connects the free ends of the phyla coronariae of the tricuspid valve. These are the components of the tricuspid annulus. Now, if you look at the diagram, the tricuspid and the mitral annulus, they lie in the same plane, yes, but even then, the mitral is slightly postero-superior to the tricuspid annulus, and it is somewhat inferior and to the left of the aortic annulus. The mitral and the tricuspid annuli, they lie in the same plane but at around 45 degrees to the sagittal plane. So that's why I told you it is a 3D model. Okay, so all of them do not necessarily lie in the same plane. So now let's try to summarize what is it that we saw in the topic of discussion, that is the skeleton of the heart. First we saw where it is, then we saw why it is called so, then we saw what the functions are, and then we finally came to what it actually is. Under the heading of what the skeleton of the heart is, we discussed it under two models. One is the two-dimensional model, the other being the three-dimensional model. In the two-dimensional model, we saw the presence of four orifices, that is the aortic, the pulmonary, the mitral and the tricuspid. And we also saw they are surrounded by fibrous rings. Then in that we also saw the presence of the tendon of infundibulum connecting the aortic to the pulmonary. Then we saw the triangular fibrous-like area connecting the aortic, the mitral and the tricuspid, that is the trigonum fibrosum dextrum, and the left margin of which is specifically called the trigonum fibrosum sinistrum. Following that, we came to the three-dimensional model. In the three-dimensional model, we have realized that the fibrous rings were replaced by collagenous annuli. So there were four annuli that were discussed. The first one being the aortic, then we saw the pulmonary, then we saw the mitral, then we saw the tricuspid. In the aortic annulus, which we have come to realize forms the central part of the three-dimensional model, we saw the presence of scallops, three of them, one anterior and two posterior. And we also saw the presence of the triangular-like area between the scallops, that is the subaortic span. At the bottom or the nadir of the scallops, we also saw the presence of fibrous trigones, that is the left and the right. The right one also called as the central fibrous body. And we also came to realize that the aortic span, that is the subaortic span, continues down as the subaortic curtain. So after the red rose, if I may, we came to the blue rose, that is the pulmonary annulus. Of course, I've already told you that the red rose and the blue rose are only for the sake of depiction. So coming to the pulmonary annulus, we saw that again there are three scallops and the span between the corresponding scallops were called subvalvar span. And we saw there was a connection between the pulmonary annulus and the aortic annulus, that is the tendon of infundibulum, which is at 90 degrees, clearly showing that both of them do not lie in the same plane. Following this, we came to the mitral annulus. In the mitral annulus, we saw the presence of phyla coronariae, anterior and posterior, and we also saw the presence of weak sulcal connective tissue connecting the tips of these phyla coronariae. And in the mitral annulus, we also saw the presence of the two fibrous trigones. Then we came to the tricuspid annulus. In the tricuspid annulus, we saw the presence of the central fibrous body, and again the anterior and posterior phyla coronariae and the weak sulcal connective tissue. So that brings us to the end of the session. So what we saw today was what is the skeleton of the heart, what are the components of the skeleton of the heart, and we saw that it can be discussed in a 2D fashion and a 3D fashion. So like I said in the beginning, it is a comparatively difficult topic, but I hope that I have been able to break it down and make it comparatively easy to understand. So till we meet again next time, stay safe, keep smiling, God bless.